Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cohesion Podcast. Now, today I'm joined by Stephen M.R. Covey. Now, he's a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author of The Speed of Trust and Trust and Inspire, and also serves as the global practice leader of speed and trust at FranklinCovey. Stephen is the former CEO of Covey Leadership Center, which became the largest leadership development company in the world under his direction. He's also the son of Dr. Stephen R. Covey, renowned author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shawn. So great to be with you. Excited.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, me too. A little nervous. I don't get super nervous, but growing up, like at first they said, hey, you're going to interview Stephen Covey. I was like, no, not the Stephen Covey. But then I love your work. And candidly, I hadn't gotten to a lot of it until after they let me know we were going to speak. But so thoughtful, so meaningful. And this isn't just me sort of blowing smoke. Like your work on trust and sort of like where we're headed, future of work, leadership, relationships. So I'm a little what do they call it? Halo effect. Where I'm like, I hope he's nice.
I hope so too. I try to be. Hey, but I'm excited to be with you, Shawn, and Cohesion Podcast. I heard I went through several of your episodes, and so I'm equally excited to be with you. Have a chance to have this dialogue.
Oh, this is perfect. See, you are a nice guy. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, let's kick off some things. These are just things to get to know you a little bit better. This is listen, it's not perfect for creating authenticity. You talk about that as part of trust, but we get to know a little bit more about you. So the first question is, what are the top 5 most opened apps on your phone?
Okay. Well, gosh, I'm going to my phone right now. But Spotify, I love music.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and then the podcast app.
Yep.
Because I love to go to podcasts. Audible, because I love to listen to. I read my books through listening first, usually.
Mm.
And then if I really like the book, I'll buy it, the physical copy.
Yeah.
But I like to listen, and I have so many different opportunities to listen, and it enables me to consume a lot more that way.
Yeah.
So I also spend a lot of time on politics. So I've got a news feed app that gives me a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I love sports too. So, yeah, I mean, ESPN, it's a lot of fun. And so, those are ones I use a lot. And I probably spend too much time, look at my phone. My wife thinks I do. But I try to get away from it too, have breaks to get away from technology, get off the grid.
Yeah.
And which is fun to do, but you realize how addicted you can become.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got a good setup. Most of your apps, you listen. You don't even have to look at the app. Yeah. Music, podcasts. Any top artist on Spotify that you listen to a lot, or type of music?
Well, this is where I like some of the kind of classic rock and alternative rock. I like Coldplay. Yes. I've got a 21-year-old daughter, so I'm deep into Taylor Swift too, because I started taking my daughter to Taylor Swift concerts when she was 8 years old.
Oh wow!
And I'd go with her, and so I've been to I haven't been to the Eras concert yet. She's gone without me, but I am going to make it before it's over. I either got to get to Europe this summer or some. There's a few more in the fall, but I love some of the classic rock stuff.
Yeah,
and or alternative rock, I guess, is what you would call Coldplay. But I still love Billy Joel. And so some of the older stuff is
No,
really what I love.
I got you. Well, everybody, you probably didn't hear it here first, but you heard it here. Stephen Covey, Swifty. Stephen Swifty Covey, which is fantastic. All right, so the question's more about your I guess your style, the things you study, your life. What's an insult that you've received that you're proud of?
An insult. Well, maybe when someone calls me a motivational speaker, because that just sounds like I'm just some guy that's just gonna go in and try to pump people up with rah stuff, psych up stuff, and no insight, no depth, no application, just this, like Matt Foley, motivational speaker on Saturday Night Live, the Chris Farley character.
Yep.
I'm a motivational speaker, and that type of thing. So they don't mean to insult me. They just don't know what to call it. And
that's right.
I don't mind if someone says an inspirational speaker. The word motivational speaker kind of is something I say, I try not to be that. Hopefully I'm trying to make sure I add depth and substance. I'm not against the concept. People don't know how to refer to it.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to shy away from being called a motivational speaker.
Hey, listen, if you need a dancer in the background, somebody to shoot t-shirts out of a cannon, I can do that. You come out, move your hands up and down. What? Yeah, let's get going. No, I've got you. Well, then moving on to trust a little bit, and then of course I'm going to ask you about your dad. But starting with trust, what you've been studying this and looking at this for a while now, and all of your books focus on this and focus on trust. What do you think the greatest or the biggest misconception is with trust and trust in general? It doesn't even need to be in the workplace, but just with humans in general. What's the biggest misconception, do you think?
Yeah, maybe kind of that trust is something that you either have or you don't. It's either there or it's not. And I'm making the case that, look, we may inherit a situation where there's so much trust or not, or there may be a starting place with trust, but trust is a learnable skill. Trust is a competency. Trust is actually something that we can intentionally create and build on purpose. And so trust is a learnable skill instead of something you either have or you don't.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge that there is a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same way that you can diminish trust through your behavior and lose it, you can also consciously, deliberately create it, grow it, expand it through your behavior. You can behave your way into trust, just like you can behave your way out of it. And the idea that this is learnable as a competency, as a skill, we can build a high trust team, a high trust culture, even if we don't start that way. That's kind of a myth that I'm shifting, the idea that it's not learnable, that it's either there or not. And no, I'm saying this is learnable. You can get good at
this. I love that. I appreciate that. I'm wondering, so when you say that, in my brain, I might be thinking about it differently, or I don't want to say wrong, but because it's both sides. Like you got the person that's creating the trust or working to create the trust, and then the person that's like granting it. And are you saying that that's something that's learnable on both sides? Like you can learn how to trust, and you can also learn how to build trust.
Absolutely. And I love how you framed this, Shawn, because there's two halves of this. And it's both the half of, there's two parties involved. Anytime you're dealing with trust, there's two parties. Now you can have self-trust as well with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
But there's two parties involved, trust between people, but there's two halves. And the first is you need to be trustworthy. Yes, you earn trust. Trust is earned, and you're trustworthy. You're credible. You build it through your through your behavior, through your character, through your competence. You earn trust. But it's not enough to merely be trustworthy, because you could have two trustworthy people working together, both trustworthy, and yet no trust between them. That's possible. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Trustworthy people working together, but no trust between them. So in addition to being trustworthy, you also need to be trusting.
Yeah.
Be willing to give the trust. That's the idea that trust is given. Trust is both earned and given, both. And so you can get good at both halves of that, to learn how to build the trust through your credibility, through becoming trustworthy, but also learning how to become more trusting as a leader, granting the trust, giving the trust. And that's vital to build trust on any team, any organization, both halves of the equation. And sometimes we have to work on, either half, each of us individually or collectively. And I find, as I work with organizations around the world, especially with senior teams, that the bigger gap in creating high trust teams at the senior levels is less that people aren't trustworthy, because they probably wouldn't be in the roles that they're in if they weren't trustworthy. It's more that they're not trusting enough. That's often the bigger gap, becoming more trusting, be willing to give that trust. And it's because, we're operating in a low trust world. So people are a little bit careful, cautious about just trusting people, because you can get burned. And so I'm not advocating a blind trust where it's indiscriminate, but rather a smart trust. But we've got to be more trusting in order to create more trust. And so both halves of the equation are vital, but I find that maybe the bigger half that's lacking today is that we're not trusting enough.
That's really fascinating, because I think, and I could be wrong, but I think a lot of people, when we say trust, like even when you just first said like it's teachable, my mind, even in that situation, doesn't go to the I need to learn how to trust more. It goes to the I need to learn how to build trust or become trustworthy. So I love that you mentioned that you could have two people both trustworthy on a team. It's like you have fantastic guitar play, fantastic piano player, fantastic guitar player. They're at the top of their game, but they might not be able to be in a band together because they can't play together and the way that they perform. So that's that's really interesting to me that it's, you see that potential gap is more on the I have to learn how to trust.
Yeah. Now, again, sometimes the issue is that we need to focus on the trustworthiness, earning that trust, demonstrating the character, demonstrating the competence, behaving our way into greater trust. That's also vital.
Sure.
I like to say it's necessary, but insufficient.
Yeah.
So, you'll never have trust without trustworthiness, but you could have trustworthiness and not have trust if we're not also trusting. And so I'm just highlighting that piece because that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying let's not focus on the trustworthiness side. We have to. We got to stay focused on that. Let's just add to it.
Yeah.
The trusting side. Become better at that, learning how to appropriately extend trust in smart ways, becoming more trusting. That's not irresponsible or a blind trust, but a smart trust so that we can create more trust, because there's a reciprocity of trust, meaning, when you give it to people, they not only receive it, they tend to return it. You trust people, they tend to trust you back. When you don't trust people, they tend to not trust you either.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I've worked with organizations around the world, in low trust companies, low trust cultures where, there's very low trust and employees don't trust their management, I find the biggest factor why employees don't trust their management in low trust companies is because management doesn't trust the employees, and the employees reciprocate that distrust right back at them. Same thing can happen in a relationship, in a partnership, in a marriage, in a family, in a community, with friends, neighbors. You don't trust people, they tend to not trust you. So leading with trust, starting with trust, is vital. Now, at the same time, I also know not everyone can be trusted. So you can't just
Yeah.
blindly
Here you
extend
go.
trust to anyone and everyone, because that's
Yeah.
being gullible, not smart.
Yeah.
And so you got to use good judgment
Yeah.
and kind of assess the situation, assess the risk, assess the credibility of the people involved. And having said all of that, I still say we've got to find more ways to extend trust to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I find that is the bigger gap. Can I share a brief experience on this one, Shawn?
No, I would. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so about a year ago, I was in Metzingen, Germany, and I met with the CEO of Hugo Boss. Hugo Boss, the big
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
global fashion retailer. By the way, that's always an intimidating thing to go into a fashion retailer, and I'm not known as a fashion icon. My wife said, "You're going where?" The Hugo Boss. She goes, "Honey, I don't know if you're aware, but you're not exactly a fashion icon." And I said, "I know that, but they're not asking me to model." And so they want to talk about trust. And so I went there and spent time with their CEO and with their leadership team. And so the CEO is Daniel Greeter. And he had come in, he'd come in a couple of years earlier. He came in from the outside. And he shared his whole experience with me. And he said, when I came in the first week on the job, I got together with my top 100 leaders.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, team, we have a choice. You're new to me. I'm new to you. You don't know me. I don't know you. Here's our choice. We can spend the next year getting to know each other, deciding whether or not we can trust each other, whether you can trust me, whether I can trust you. We can do that. And we can spend the next year doing that. And if we do so, we're going to waste a year. Or we can start from day one and start by trusting each other. So that's our choice. Let me tell you where I come down on this." He said, "I want everyone here to know something. I trust you. I trust you. And I'm asking you, trust me back. Together, we can create a whole new way of working together, a whole new kind of trust from the beginning."
Yeah.
But see, he went first. Look, this is Germany. This is not the natural starting point necessarily culturally.
Right.
To start with trust. Most people would start with suspicion until kind of proven otherwise. But he came in and said, "I trust you. Trust me back. We'll build something together." So this was disarming. It was refreshing, but also a little bit, people were kind of wondering, is this real? It was real. And he demonstrated. He went first. He modeled it. And people like being trusted. They wanted to live up to it.
Yeah.
It actually brought out the best in them, and they did reciprocate and return the trust right back to him.
Yep.
So they created what they call their Claim 5 strategy, which was a 5-year strategic plan. They had all the metrics you'd expect in such a plan of market share and growth and revenue and profits and cash flow and the like. Well, at the time, so this is a year ago when I met with them, they were 2 years into their 5-year plan, and they were achieving the metrics at year 4 of the plan. Oh, wow. They were 2 years ahead of schedule. Daniel told me, "Stephen, we are moving at the speed of trust."
Yeah.
And they were. But see, he initiated this. He went first very intentionally. It was almost, the idea of extreme trust. It was saying, "I trust you. Trust me back." Yeah. And it was remarkable what they created fast in a culture that had not started with trust as a starting point.
Yeah.
He shifted it. Someone went first. The leader went first and was both trustworthy and also trusting intentionally. Yeah. And they created trust a lot faster. So it's really a remarkable thing. And for him, here's why it was smart. He said, "Look, we hire winners at Hugo Boss. So my starting point is I trust you because you've been hired. You're part of our team. I trust you as a starting point until you prove otherwise that I should not."
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you mentioned the rise too. So when he starts first, I mean, that came to mind when you were talking, that if you extending trust to somebody, even if you don't know quite yet like until they prove otherwise, they're winners. That totally makes sense. But extending it, I know I've had that happen to me. I sort of rise to the, like, I want to be trustworthy, but
Yeah.
because you've extended the trust to me, so I want to rise to that occasion. That totally makes sense to me, and reminds me of another story in your book about your dad. When the now listen, you were 7 years old when he gave you the responsibility of taking care of the lawn. And by the way, I'm not picturing a small picket fence kind of lawn. I mean, your dad was Stephen Covey. Like, you're in charge of a decent sized lawn to
It was a
keep
decent,
to keep green and
it was a
mowed.
decent sized lawn. It was 3 different sections of it. And this was back in the days. This does age me. This is back in the days before automatic sprinklers. So you had to
Oh.
manually do all of this. Yeah.
So he sits you down when you're 7 and puts you in charge. Like, he extends that trust, puts you in charge of the law. Now, how did this happen? What's it like to be 7 years old and sort of get this? And did you keep that responsibility like until you were 17? Did you keep that responsibility for a long time? Tell us
Yeah.
more about that story. It's wonderful
Yeah.
for the people that haven't read the
Yeah.
book.
It's a fun story. My dad first told it in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, his book. And then in Trust and Inspire, I kind of give my side of the story or my experience in this. But yeah, I was just a young boy. He was trying to teach us kids, responsibility. And so he asked, who wants to take care of the yard? And there was a 7-year-old say, I'll take it. I raised my hand. I'll volunteer. He goes, okay. And so he trained me over 2 weeks. He trained me into taking care of the yard. He wanted the yard to be green and clean, green and clean. And so he trained me what green looked like. And he trained me what clean looked like. And again, I'm 7, so it took a bit of time. And he taught me how I could. It was up to me how I wanted to do it, because he said, I want to focus on results, not methods.
Mm-hmm.
So how you go about doing this is up to you. He goes, if you want, you could use hoses or buckets, or you could spit all day long. All I care about is the yard is green and clean. He goes, if I were you, though, I'd want to turn on the sprinklers because it'd probably be faster.
Yeah.
And but he was trying to teach me, got to get the results. But then he said, now you're going to judge yourself. You're going to be accountable yourself, and you're going to report to me how you're doing. So let's do this. We agreed that every week we would walk around and I would tell him how I'm doing against the standard of green and clean.
Yeah.
And so we built accountability as well as expectations around kind of an agreement. And he didn't call it an agreement, but it was building an agreement with a 7-year-old that I want the yard to be green and clean. Those are results, clear expectations around results. And every week you tell me how you're doing against the standard of green and clean. That's accountability. And so, so after 2 weeks of training, he turned it over to me. Well, I am a little embarrassed to say I did not. I did nothing. I did nothing for the first 5 days. I did nothing on, it was a Saturday, turned it over, did nothing Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And this is in the middle of the summer, and it was scorching hot, and the yard was turning yellow by the hour at this point on the 5th day. And we'd had a big neighborhood barbecue over the weekend, and there was garbage strewn all throughout the yard. It was anything but green and clean. And my dad knew this. He could see that I'd done nothing. And he was tempted to kind of just take the job right back, thinking, he's too young. He's 7. He's not ready for this yet. But he didn't. He stayed with it. And we went back to the agreement that we'd walk the yard and see how it was going. So we began to walk the yard, and I knew full well as we were walking that this yard is not green. It's yellow. I'd done nothing, and it was not clean. It was dirty. It was messy, garbage everywhere. And I began to break down and cry. And I said, Dad, this is just so hard. And he kind of said, well, son, what's hard? You haven't done one single thing yet. And, but what was hard was me kind of owning this, taking responsibility for it, feeling like this is my job. And he said, do you remember? I said, Dad, will you help me? He said, well, do you remember our agreement? And I said, yeah, you told me that you would help me if you have time. That's right. Do you have time, Dad? I've got time, he said.
Yeah.
So I ran into the house and I came out with a couple of garbage sacks and I took one of him and then I gave one to my dad. I said, Dad, would you go over there where the barbecue was and would you pick up all that garbage? He said, I'll do whatever you want. I'm your helper. And so I began to direct my dad as a 7-year-old and telling him what to do, to pick up the garbage. And it was at that moment I realized this is my job. I own this. My dad is doing what I'm asking him to do. I'm directing him. And that's when suddenly it dawned on me, I own this. I'm responsible. I'm capable. And I began to take care of that yard from that moment forward. And I took care of it not only for, that summer, but for many, many summers to come. And the yard was green and it was clean. My dad never had to ask about it with me again. And I owned it. Occasionally we'd say, let's walk the yard, and we'd walk the yard but it was green and it was clean because I felt responsibility. See, what he did is he didn't give up on me and quickly kind of write me off saying he's too young or just go back to a command and control style where he just starts to tell me what to do and how to do it. Instead, he trusted me. He built the relationship. He extended that trust. He empowered me with an agreement, with expectations, with accountability. And he treated me according to my potential, not my behavior. Because at first I did nothing, but he treated me as if I had potential. And I ultimately lived up to that potential and began to see myself differently. And I came out of that whole experience feeling I'm capable, I'm responsible, I can do this. And I did do this. It was a big success for me. And I felt trusted and I felt inspired. And I came from that saying, I can do this.
Yeah.
As a 7-year-old. And it became really a foundational imprint experience in my life of the power of trust and being trusted, how it can change how you see yourself and the confidence you have in yourself. And when someone has confidence in you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you described in in your book, you talk about, I think you call it stewardship agreements.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's exactly what you just described, that your dad started with you as a stewardship agreement instead of was it command and control?
Yeah. A command and control, just dictating it, telling him what to do, how to do it. Hey, go clean up that. No, take care of that. Turn on those sprinklers. No, it was instead, I want the yard to be green and clean. How you do it's up to you. And let's walk the yard every week. You tell me how you're doing. Not I'll come and judge you. You judge yourself, but against a high standard of green and clean. You report back on yourself. And so that's kind of building a stewardship agreement. There's always two halves of the agreement. The first half is to have clear expectations that include the desired results that we're after, the guidelines, which included in this case, you can't paint the yard. No, in other words, I can't achieve green and clean by just painting it. That's not real. That's artificial. So there's always guidelines to work within, parameters. And then there's resources. And the resources in this case was, he said, I'm your helper if I have time. If I ever have time, you can ask me and I'll help you. Yeah. And, so I had resources, but I was very clear what the results were. The expectations were built together. And the best thing, when you build a stewardship agreement with someone, and again, this is an example with a 7-year-old. Yeah. And the point is, if it can work with a 7-year-old, I'll bet it can work with a 27-year-old or a 47-year-old or a 67-year-old. It can work with anyone really. But it's always the two halves, clarifying expectations and then practicing accountability to those expectations. And in this case, it was, let's walk the yard every week. Tell me how you're doing. And so when you're doing this with another person, you clarify expectations together around the desired results, the guidelines, the resources, and then agree to a process of accountability. And so that, how do you know how you're doing against the results and how will you report back? You can empower someone. And that way you as a leader can build an agreement, trust someone. They feel empowered, they feel trusted, and yet you've still not lost control. And that's often the concern for people of, what if I trust them? They don't deliver. They don't come through. And what
Yeah.
if I lose control? Well, shift the control from you having to hover over and micromanage to them reporting back on how they're doing against the agreement that you built together. And I've learned this: if you build the agreement together, then that's a far different thing than if you dictate the agreement.
Yeah.
If you just tell them, here's what to do, and I'll judge you, that they're less involved in that. They're less committed. They'll comply maybe
if they're a 7-year-old. Yeah. Right. Or they'll get fired. Yeah.
You want their creativity, their commitment, their passion.
Yeah.
You build it together. That's when they rise to the occasion. They feel trusted, to your point, Shawn, they rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
Brings out the very best in them.
Yeah.
They become creative, innovative. They come up with all kinds of ways of performing better because they feel like they own it. They feel like you trust them. They feel inspired by you.
Yeah.
But you haven't lost control because they're still accountable to you against the expectations, and they report on you, and they know better maybe than you do and how they're really doing. And so it's a really powerful way of both getting the job done, maybe even better than they would do if you were micromanaging them, but also growing the person so that they develop capabilities and then therefore their ability to get results in the future has just gone up because they're more capable. They've grown.
You build this, the extending this, it is inspiring. You extend this trust, you build something together, you provide them the resources, the safety net kind of thing of like, you can reach out, you can help. That totally makes sense as a way to sort of illustrate, build trust with somebody. But this, I don't know if it's a but, and as a leader, your dad or you or whoever's a leader and has people that are working for them doing this stewardship agreement, it seems like there is a particular way they need to see the world, or like certain values they need to see, where they're not looking at people as like you mentioned, you start with suspicion, cog in the machine. Like, I don't really trust you. Just do what I say that you'll do.
Right.
You see them as resources to be used. Tell me a little more about it. I know you talk about this in the book, and I can't remember everything that you sort of point out, but what do I have to value as a leader in order to make something like this work? Because maybe I agree. Yeah, stewardship agreements are great, but if I don't have this certain sort of outlook of the world or the way I think about people, that could fall apart pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And in fact, your paradigm, I love the word paradigm, which, we use it a lot today and we kind of maybe overuse it, but it comes from the Greek paradigma. That's a mental map or model. The idea of a map is the map is supposed to describe the territory, but you could have an inaccurate map of a territory where the map is not accurate. And you could have an inaccurate map of people, of who they are, whether capable of or not. You could have an inaccurate map of leadership. So a more complete, accurate map or paradigm of people and of leadership is vital. And I call it a trust and inspire map versus a command and control map. Command and control, I kind of have a fixed mindset towards others, where I might have a growth mindset for myself, but with others, I'm suspicious. I'm not quite sure. I've got to make sure I'm going to manage them. I treat them like things almost, and I'm managing people and things similarly. With a trust and inspire mindset, I have a growth mindset, not only for myself, but for others. So I see the greatness, the potential, the talent that's inside of people. That's my first fundamental belief, is that people have greatness inside of them. So if I buy that belief, then my job as a leader is to unleash their potential, not to try to contain or control them.
Yeah.
But it starts by seeing the potential. If I see the potential inside of people, it might be lying dormant. It might be unseen.
Yeah.
But if I can see it as a leader, then I can help them come to see it. And see, my father as a 7-year-old, he saw potential in me I had no idea about as a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
but he helped me come to see it in myself. And that's what great leaders do. They help others see what's inside of them. I love how Henry David Thoreau put it. He said, it's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. Do you see the potential? Two leaders could look at another person and one see nothing and another see enormous potential and greatness inside of that same person. So it starts with theirs, a growth mindset for everyone, seeing the potential. Then another element is seeing people as a whole person, meaning a body, a heart, a mind, and a spirit. People are whole people. That's a belief about people. So if I buy that belief, my job as a leader is to inspire, not merely motivate. And here's what I mean by that. See, if people were merely economic beings, in other words, only a body,
that's it,
then motivation would be sufficient. Just pay them.
Yeah.
And people do want to be paid. They do have a body. They want to be paid, and they want to be paid fairly. But they also have a heart. So they want to care, and they want to connect, and they want to belong, and they want to love. And they have a mind. So they want to grow and to develop. They have a spirit. They want to contribute, make a difference, add value, have significance, matter. And so inspiring can take you to a whole different place than motivation alone will ever achieve. Inspiring includes motivation. It's which is the external rewards, but it includes the inspiration that you light the fire within. It's inside of people. And that fire, once lit, can burn on for months, if not years, without the need for more external stimuli. So I view people as whole people and having greatness inside of them. That's a more complete map of people, more accurate map or paradigm of people. Then I do the same thing around leadership. I see that there's enough for everyone, an abundance mentality. So if I buy that belief, then my job as a leader is to elevate caring above competing. Yes, let's compete in the marketplace, but let's care and collaborate in the workplace. And then I see leadership as stewardship, meaning it's about responsibility, not rights, influence, not position. So if I buy that belief, my job as a leader is to put service above self-interest. And finally, I see that enduring influence is created from the inside out, not outside in. So if I buy that belief, my job as a leader is to go first. Someone needs to go first. Leaders go first, like the Daniel Greeter story I told at Hugo Boss. He went first by extending that trust. Leaders go first. And so those are I call these the fundamental beliefs of a trust and inspire leader. I see the greatness in people as whole people, and I view leadership as stewardship, where there's enough for everyone, and I model it. I go first. And that's a better way of leading than, a command and control style of leadership where I manage people like I manage things. And I'm saying trust and inspire is the idea is you manage things, you lead people. People don't want to be managed. People want to be led. They want to be trusted. They want to be inspired. But it starts with our paradigm of how we view people, how we view leadership. And this is a more expansive paradigm of people and of leadership. And I believe it's a far more accurate paradigm of people and of leadership. It's a better way to lead, to see the greatness inside of people.
Well, we are seeing especially after, post-COVID world, you had a lot of people that started working remotely, not coming into the office. And part of that was the opportunity for them to discover themselves, who they are as people, like what matters to them, what's important to them. You have the actual just threat of annihilation for some of them, with the pandemic and what was happening. So that when it came time to go back into the office, there's been this interesting sort of push-pull, this tug that's been going on. And I think it was Dell. They were one of the first ones to go out and say, okay, you come into the office or you can't be promoted. You'll make less money, like sort of set up these consequences. Was it 50% of the people said, fine, I won't be promoted. I'm not going to make less money, because it wasn't just the paycheck. It wasn't just the, hey, like I give you money, do what I tell you to do. There was something. That's when you talk about bringing this wholeness of a whole person, creating that has such meaning now that you have people, workers who used to be sort of trapped in this, I have to do this or else I'm not going to eat, or I have to do this or I'm not going to they're realizing too, like it's important that I'm a whole person, not just a cog in the machine. So I appreciate that. I think that's more relevant now than it ever has been.
More than ever before. And I do agree that for many, COVID kind of brought this out where people could
Yes.
see it more clearly. I was with Dr. Larry Rosia, who's president of Saskatchewan Polytechnic,
Oh
big
wow. Yeah.
technical school up in Canada. And he said it was during COVID when he was having these Zoom meetings with his team, and he started to have see people in different settings in their home setting,
Oh,
because I began to see people not as an employee for the first time. I began to see them as a dad or a mom or a friend or a neighbor, as a
yeah.
person, as a
Yeah.
whole person. And I began to see him differently. And then when I saw him differently, I started to treat him differently. And I recognized it's not just doing the work, although that mattered. It was that they could do the work better when I recognized who they were. And they had a desire to belong and to be part of something, to be part of a team, and to care. And that they were really what they wanted: purpose, and they wanted meaning and contribution, not just a paycheck.
Hmm.
Yes, they wanted the paycheck, but much more. And he said, I saw him as a whole person, and
Yeah.
it changed everything. And they built such a bigger, stronger team. And so, having that kind of shift in our thinking is, I think, significant, because then we want to move towards inspiration, not just motivation.
Yeah.
It takes us to a whole new place. And then we can actually bring out the best that's in people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
plus we'll attract and retain talent better this way, when people are seen as whole people, and that we're after their growth and their development,
Yeah.
as well as getting the job done.
Yeah.
That's what you always want both. We got to perform, and I'm not ratcheting that need to perform down one bit. I'm just elevating the growth of people to the same importance as delivering results.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
elevating the ladder, saying we got
Yeah.
to also grow people and see them as whole people that want to grow, want to develop, and they'll actually do both better when you see them this way.
Yeah. It seems so obvious or
It does.
simple. This connection with others. I took a team of executives at GoDaddy. We did a storytelling workshops. So we just talked about how to tell stories and a couple of the rules, right? It could only be 5 minutes or less, and it could have nothing to do with work. And then we rented out comedy clubs, and we would have the executives come. They would stand on stage. We invited all the employees that wanted to come. They could come and watch these executives tell stories about themselves, about their life. And there was one executive specifically that was definitely a command and control. Like, just do what I want you to just, and they didn't have a lot of love throughout the organization, especially outside their team. Not a lot of love. And he got up, he told a story, and it was, doing something with his brother, biking across Africa. And it was touching. It was moving to see that aspect of him. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, great. I can't hate this guy anymore." Like, as soon as, so it was even that other direction, not just you finding out about your team and their moms and dads and runners and writers, and they like to watch anime, like whatever that is. And
Yeah,
but it's also on that leader side, being
absolutely.
like, is that humility or is that just being normal? For
It,
a leader to, is that authenticity? I'm not.
it's a combination of both authenticity but also vulnerability,
Mm,
which makes you relatable.
mm,
So I can relate to this. And when someone's relatable, they can connect to it more.
yeah.
They can see themselves in that, and versus someone that's just trying to put on airs or put a front and come across as like I'm this perfect person, leader, and almost like a machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially in a day of AI, we got all these other things, but they have that human connectability, relatability, the caring, the connection. And so I think the key thing here it really is this authenticity, which means real, but also vulnerability, which means I let people see into what's real. So I love for vulnerability, I love the term intimacy, but spell it this way: into me, see.
Oh, yeah.
I let people see into me a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And I was with Dr. Leslie John. She's a professor at Harvard Business School, and she does a lot of work and research on vulnerability and how vulnerability builds trust. And she says that the leader always has this question: Do I conceal or do I reveal? And the instincts are that as a leader, you kind of conceal,
Yeah.
so that you don't want to get too vulnerable and open it up. But if you appropriately reveal, again, you can go too far, and you can just, you don't want people to lose confidence in you. But if you appropriately reveal, you open yourself up a little bit. I'm human too, and that what the leader that chooses to reveal builds trust so much faster than the leader that conceals. Because why? They're relatable. They're not only authentic, they're vulnerable, they're open.
Yeah.
And I can see myself in them. So I say to people, to not only declare your intent, declare yourself, who you are, what you're about, how you like to work. My friend Doug Conant, he's the former CEO of Campbell's Soup Company. And he turned around Campbell. They were in the bottom 10% in engagement, according to Gallup, and they went to the top 10%. They went from worst to first. And they also did it on the financial side, from the bottom quartile to the top quartile.
Amazing how that works.
And he said the number one practice that helped do this was him modeling declaring myself to my team. Because he says, I'm trying to take the mystery out of the relationship and just say, I'm a human being working with another human being. There's a connection here. People can relate to that. They're more committed to that. We work better together, and there's no mystery behind this. And so I've always focused on declaring your intent, give the why behind the what, but also declare yourself, who you are, be authentic, be vulnerable, builds trust. You work better together, you grow people, and you get better results.
Yeah.
Really
I interviewed, it was only, a smattering at Wish, last place I was at. And it's probably 150 people about trust specifically. And just asked, I assumed it would be, I hadn't read your book yet, but I assumed it would be, they do what they say they'll do. I thought that would be the core. Everything would be that. Like, this is how it works. And almost unilaterally, I would say almost every single person I chatted with, it was exactly that. If the leader shows me that they're a human being, they're not putting on the airs of what I think it's supposed to be like to be a leader. Command and control, command and conquer, lead the army, tell you what to do, issue orders. And it got me thinking or wondering if there's so much evidence and how that creates successful, innovative, creative, like they're able to come up with great solutions. And then, shareholders, board members see the results. Thumbs up. I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing it. That's amazing. What keeps organizations, leaders, people from sort of breaking out of this command and control model? What keeps organizations from doing this? And I also bring this up because I know there are listeners that are thinking, that's great. I love all of this. That totally makes sense to me. How do we do that? How do I do that within an organization that might have more command and control sort of built in?
Yeah. It is a great question, Shawn, because like you're saying, at one level, this seems just self-evident.
I know,
especially today. And obvious. And yet, our research shows that about 9 out of 10 organizations and leaders today still operate primarily out of a command and control base model of leadership more than a trust and inspire one. And so we might kind of know this, but we're not doing it. And to know
and not to do is not to know. So we don't really know it yet because we're not applying it. And I think there are a whole variety of reasons for it. We're operating still in a command and control world. For all of our progress is still a command and control world. It's like that's our native tongue. It's what we know.
Yeah.
It's what we're good at. It's what we've grown up with. It's what our mentors and models have been. We're coming at, we're still deeply scripted in the industrial age. It's in our language, in our systems. And we talk about high potentials. Well, talk about a growth mindset. That's just saying there's some people that we can have a growth mindset towards, but what about everyone else we didn't label?
I know.
As high potential. Just that language.
Well, just hearing it, you're like, oh, they're picking out the high pose. I'm not on the list.
And what does that communicate to everyone? And so forth. So in our language, in our systems, in our structures, very much still a command and control world. I was with a group of educators. And I said, these were superintendents of schools. I said, one reason why teachers are leaving the profession, yes, we don't pay them enough, but we never have paid them enough.
No.
why are they leaving? I said, we're not trusting them. I said, look, we've given them responsibility for our children, and yet we don't trust them. And I put up an image of the thermostat in the homeroom that had a covered plastic thing and they can't set it themselves.
Right.
We don't trust them to control the thermostat in their own room. And, the command and control was so deeply embedded in entire cultures and that, and that's going on. It's our native tongue and still most organizations today. And then also old paradigms die hard. I use a metaphor on this. Take bloodletting. Bloodletting started 3,000 years ago with the Egyptians, then it moved to the Romans, then it continued. But it was still practiced commonly in the 1700s, even later. And yet it was in the 1600s that Samuel Weiss and others discovered that the disease is not in the blood, the German theory and the like. So they disproved bloodletting. It's not real. It doesn't work. And yet
it kept going.
It persisted as a common practice for another couple hundred years.
Yeah.
I believe that command and control is modern day bloodletting. Yeah. That we're just it's so into us in our systems and structures that it's continuing. But then I also think there's personal barriers that get in the way. That and I'll name some of these. I describe these in the Trust Inspire book as the 5 common barriers to becoming a Trust Inspire leader, and they include things like, well, I like this idea of being Trust Inspire, but this won't work here.
Yeah.
Not on my team, not with my boss, or not in our company, not in our industry, not in my situation. Kind of good idea, but this won't work here. And, the context does matter. It does make a difference, but, we got to model first, then mentor. Maybe your boss is not Trust Inspire. Maybe he or she is command and control, but that doesn't mean that you can't become Trust Inspire with your people, your team. Yeah. So this won't work here.
Your boss only cares about results.
Yeah. So deliver results.
Deliver the results and do it in a Trust and Inspire fashion.
Do it in Trust Inspire fashion. Do it in a way that also grows people.
Yeah.
Do it in a way that inspires trust. Another barrier is kind of the fear-based barriers. Okay, I'd like to do this, but what if? Yeah. What if I do this and it doesn't work?
Yeah.
What if I've been burned before? What if I lose control? What if I don't get the credit? Sometimes people, if I trust others and they get the results, they also might get the credit. And I might have a scarcity mindset. Or what if I'm not as confident as you think I am? I go through a whole bunch of fear-based scenarios and give you a way of kind of taking those on. But maybe it might not work every time, but maybe you reconceive how you look at failure. Fail fast, fail forward, fail often, fail well, and learn faster and get better and innovate and change. And, you can literally flip all of these. You can get better results when you trust people. They become more creative, more innovative. It brings out the best in people. They rise to the occasion, as we talked about.
Yeah.
you also might have, what if I don't know how to let go? So you teach people how to build a stewardship agreement with
Yeah.
expectations, with accountability, so that they haven't lost control, but they really can empower someone and still keep control. But the control shifts from hovering over and micromanaging to an agreement governing
Yeah.
and going back to the agreement. But then also, for some, they would never say this, but what if someone deep down feels like they're the smartest one in the room? No. And,
They won't
so
say it,
they won't say it.
but it definitely happens. Yeah.
And they often show up to that way to their people. The people might describe them that way. They would never say it of themselves. But I find maybe one that gets in the way a lot is kind of this idea of, this is who I am. This is what's brought me here.
Yeah.
This is what it's made me good. This is what I know. It's what I'm good at. But I would just paraphrase my friend Marshall Goldsmith. What got us here won't get us there. And the style of leadership that maybe has taken us to where we are today in a different world is not going to be where we need to go tomorrow, in a new world of remote work and hybrid work and intentionally flexible work, with younger generations, and Gen Z have a completely different expectation of how they want to be engaged and led.
Yeah.
And with work becoming far more collaborative and interdependent, and with technology changing, disrupting everything, with AI, with all these things happening, we need a new way to lead in a new world of work. So maybe command and control got us to where we are today, but trust and inspire is what's going to take us to where we need to go tomorrow. And so we got to kind of, we are not our style. We can re-script. We're not programs, we're programmers. So write a new program, re-script, around a better way to lead. And so these are all kind of just confronting the common barriers that get in the way of kind of making the shift, making the leap.
Yeah.
To trust and inspire.
Well, see, you could grow to be a model for Hugo Boss if you're really interested and had that right mindset. Well, so much of what you talk about this in the book, and what we've talked about, so much of this comes back to that growth mindset, like abundant thinking. But the growth mindset being, you mentioned earlier that they might have a growth mindset for themselves, but not for their team. But it got me thinking, is that really true if you don't have one for your team? Because to have the growth mindset for yourself, you have to be ready to grow, to learn how to trust, to not just shrug your shoulders and say, this is the way that I am. That's yeah.
If you only have it for yourself and not your team, I'm going to say you're still deep into command and control.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing the potential, the greatness, or maybe you're seeing it in a few. That's the high potential idea, but not in everyone.
Yeah.
And everyone has high potential. And that's, so I would say that you really don't have a true growth mindset, as Dr. Carol Dweck talks about. I think of Satya Nadella at Microsoft, because I use him as a great illustration of a trust and inspire leader. Because when he came in at Microsoft, they were still big and had the name and the brand and size and everything. But in their own words, they were fading into less and less relevant. They were not innovating anymore. They were losing talent. They were no longer the cool place to work. Their culture had actually become cutthroat competitive.
Yeah.
The scarcity and very competitive. But he comes in, completely different kind of leader and completely different kind of leadership style. He truly was trust and inspire. He modeled the behavior that he wanted to see with humility, with empathy, with authenticity and vulnerability. He trusted, he extended that trust. Why? Because he had a growth mindset toward everyone. So they moved from a management model to a coaching model. And he inspired by connecting with people through caring, but also connecting people to purpose, to meaning, to contribution. So he modeled, he trusted, he inspired, different kind of leader. And the growth mindset illustration is, he really got into this, that we need to have, as leaders, we need to have a growth mindset. He'd have some leaders come up to him and say, hey, half my team has a growth mindset. The other half doesn't.
Yeah.
Here's what he said to that leader. That's on you. Help them see that in themselves. So if they don't have it, help them come to see it. That's a leadership issue. You need to help them see. In other words, he was saying, these are my words now, see the greatness in everyone Your job as a leader is to help them come to see it in themselves,
Love
to
it.
help them have that growth mindset. That's not on them. That's on you as a leader to help them see it. Talk about a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
But he was saying that's your job as a leader, is help others see what's inside of them. That's what leadership does. Brings out the potential, the greatness. It's differentiating between our performance and our potential, trying to achieve that potential, bring out the potential. And it starts by seeing it. Because if the leader doesn't see it, how's the person going to see it?
Yeah.
And so that's the shift. It's a growth mindset toward everyone, seeing the greatness in everyone. And that's what's powerful. And so when you model, when you trust, when you inspire, that's the kind of leadership that's going to truly unleash the potential inside of people. We'll get better results because, again, we've got to perform better,
Right.
and we'll also grow people, which is they'll be happier, they'll have greater well-being, greater energy, greater joy. So it'll be better for the people, for the business, and better for the people.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we want? Isn't that what we need? We've got to close those gaps.
Well, as expected, Stephen, this was inspiring and comfortable and wonderful. You even in the course of our conversation, have been a leader. I mentioned at the top, I thought I was like, oh, I hope I don't go into a command and control conversation where he's like, I'm going to make sure you're afraid of me. And I'm brilliant through the entire conversation. You're inspiring, wonderful. I'm glad this is the work that you're doing. I just really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thank you, Shawn. Let me say this. This is in you. This is you. You are Trust and Inspire as a podcaster. Again, I listened to a variety of different ones in preparation for this. This Cohesion podcast is terrific, and you're great as a host because you're bringing on guests, but your premise is that you see the greatness in your guests. You're trying to bring it out of them. I feel like you have with me, but also I love what you just said, that you're not trying to impress. I think if our mantra is that we're trying to put service above self-interest, here's my way of doing that. And I'm going to use my phrase for it, but I heard you kind of just say it. Before I go in any podcast like this one or give a speech, I remind myself this little personal maxim that helps me always try to put service above self-interest. And I say simply this: seek to bless, not to impress. Mm-hmm. Seek to bless, not to impress. And that just tells my heart and my mind, hey, what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to impress anyone with knowledge and all this great erudite insight? Or am I trying to bless, to add value, to make a difference, to connect and to care and to try to help and serve? And it gets my heart right, my mind right. Seek to bless, not to impress. That's you, and it's what we're trying to do here. It's what leadership is about. Leadership is not about us. It's about them. It's about trusting people, inspiring people, unleashing people, seeing the greatness inside of people, growing people.
Yeah.
And in the process, we'll also get better results.
Yeah.
My dad got the green and clean yard for the next 12 years. Didn't have to worry about it again. But he also grew the child.
Yeah.
And brought up what the potential inside of me, and I saw myself differently, and then I can pay that forward and help bring it out in others. And it's just a better way to lead.
Yeah.
And our job as leaders is to go first.
Yeah. I think a simple way that I remember this is that you're not the hero of the story. You're the fairy godmother. They're Cinderella. Like you'll get them the shoes, the gown, get them but they got to go to the ball. You're Yoda. They're Luke Skywalker. You bless. Well, how else, where can our listeners find you? How can they follow you, and what's coming up?
Yes. Well, go to trustandinspire.com. Trustandinspire.com is a website. There's a variety of videos and tools and things you can use to go deeper into these ideas and get the book and the like. But also, I'm on LinkedIn, Stephen M.R. Covey, on X and on Instagram at Stephen M.R. Covey. Love to have you connect with me, follow me. Again, trustandinspire.com is probably the best place to go deeper, learn more.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Shawn, for this opportunity to be with you, with your listeners, with your viewers.
Yeah. Thank you.